You're set.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to call this regular meeting of council to order May 27, 2025, 6 p.m. Council Chambers, Town of St. Mary's. We are broadcasting live on the Town of St. Mary's YouTube channel this evening. The Council for the Town of St. Mary's acknowledges with gratitude and respect that we are gathering on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse, giving thanks for all creation. I'll begin this evening by asking for declarations of pecuniary interest, starting with Councillor Craigmile.
None.
Councillor Edney.
None.
Councillor Luna.
None.
Councillor Lucas.
None.
Councillor Pridham.
None.
Councillor Alward.
None.
And I have none. The agenda was circulated. Are there any errors, omissions, problems with the agenda? Seeing nothing, I'll seek a motion that the May 27th, 2025 regular council meeting agenda be accepted as presented. Someone willing to move that? Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded by Councillor Craigmile. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Next up is item number 4, which is our public input period. Is there anyone in the gallery this evening that wishes to ask a question about something on the agenda? Do we receive anything by email? I'll just refer to our clerk. Was there anything input tonight? Nothing received? Okay, so then we'll move on to delegations, why most of you are here this evening, and it's great to see such a great turnout, actually. So this evening we have a couple presentations to make for Strong as Stone. If council's okay, I'll move to the podium just to make it a little bit easier for everyone. Okay. This evening, we're honored to welcome 3 individuals who have been nominated by their peers for the Strong as Stone Recognition Program. Annually, this program allows residents to acknowledge selfless deeds that enhance the quality of life within our community. We extend our deepest gratitude to all those who dedicate their time, talents, and energy to assist others and strengthen our community. Additionally, we wish to express our appreciation to everyone who takes the time to submit nominations. It's important that we recognize our peers, and it's my pleasure this evening to make 3 presentations. His Majesty the King wasn't able to make it this evening. We tried to get him to fit it into his schedule, actually. We had a conversation, but he was unable to make it. So we just want to stress the importance of recognizing the people. The Strong as Stone has been going on for a number of years in our community. We're very grateful for the volunteers and everything they do, and this is just a small show of appreciation that council on behalf of the town can make. So our first nominee this year was Marie Stevens, and she was nominated by Wendy Aiken and Gwen Ament. Marie Stevens has actively volunteered with the St. Mary's Community Players, St. Mary's Presbyterian Church, and Inner Wheel Club of St. Mary's, serving as treasurer since 2019 and contributing to various community initiatives. She's been a consistent supporter of local charitable efforts, including the Salvation Army Kettle Program and the Heart and Stroke Society through annual canvassing. Her extensive contributions to St. Mary's showcase her dedication to the community, making her a deserving recipient of the Strong as Stone Award. So Marie, on behalf of the community, I just have a couple of small presentations to make. Congratulations and thank you for your effort. If you want to say a few words.
Pictures. Thank you to both Gwen and Wendy. One thing I will mention, because Jenny is here, is that I led fitness classes for about 10 years as a volunteer at the Friendship Center. So I love this town, and I'm all for it. I can do anything that I can able to do to make it better is wonderful. Thank you so much. Here, come here.
Okay, we're going to do pictures after. Okay.
I know we are.
Thank you. So our second nominee this evening is Stephanie Metcalf, and she was nominated by Lee Graves and Brittany Fairthorne. Stephanie Metcalf, known as Sparkle, founded the first St. Mary's Sparks and Embers unit, which has grown from a small group to 31 members aged 5 to 9 years over 8 years old. For over 8 years, sorry. She empowers young girls by fostering personal growth, community service, and teaching life skills such as first aid and financial literacy through cookie sales. Her leadership has a lasting impact, enriching the community and preparing girls as future leaders through various activities and service projects. And Stephanie's brought a few of her students here tonight with us, actually, that are involved in the program. They recently made some birdhouses for the team, for the town, actually, that are down in Meadow Ridge. So council was quite excited about that. They came and made a presentation and showed off the birdhouses. So we're always very lucky to have young people in our community being active, and we thank you for your efforts, Stephanie. On behalf of council and the town, I'd like to make a small presentation to you.
Well, I'm not a public speaker, so this is very uncomfortable, but I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Brittany and Leah, for nominating me. I just have a few thank yous. One, my mom for being helpful from the very beginning. My children for being guinea pigs throughout this whole process. My husband for the mess this leaves in our home. My mother-in-law and all the leaders present and past and future that have made this such a success. Thank you.
And just so everyone's aware, after the presentations, we'll do a picture on the front steps if everyone's okay, just to stick around for a minute with the awards. So our third nominee is Alison Sharon, and she was nominated by Kate Orland-Beer and Dan Welcher. Alison Sharon, a poet and St. Mary's resident, serves as the director and chair of the St. Mary's Poetry Circle. She's tirelessly organized community poetry events and chairs monthly meetings promoting both local and global poetry. Her dedication extends beyond poetry as she actively supports community events and local poets in St. Mary's, including the deputy mayor, who I understand she's got involved actually as well. Alison's efforts significantly enrich the cultural fabric of St. Mary's, making her a deserving recipient for this community award. So Alison, if you could please come forward, I have an award. Congratulations.
I'm thrilled and delighted and honored to get this nomination. Thank you very much, Kate and Dan and the Poetry Circle. And also, apart from the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Pridham has also been part of our group at one time. And we've always had support from the town, very grateful for that. And it's lovely to have an award in the arts. I think the arts can speak to people and affect our hearts in a wonderful way. So I look forward to many more adventures with the group. Thanks so much to the group who are coming along to support. Bye.
So just one housekeeping note before we go out and take a picture, if the award winners are so willing. The next call for Strongest Own nominations will start in the spring of 2026. Announcement will be made when nominations open through the local media, social media, and the town website. So look for the nomination process. And again, we appreciate the work that the volunteers do and the people that nominated. It's something, sometimes we can never say thank you enough, but certainly their efforts, like the people that were here this evening, certainly make this a town worth living in. So if everyone's okay, we'll just take a quick photo on the front steps if we can, please. How you doing, John? Oh, no. You want a hand here? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, we'll reconvene then if everyone's okay. We have a presentation this evening from the Ontario Clean Water Agency. We've been here many times. Susan Budden and Mark Bow are here to present and take any questions with regards to the first quarter 2025 water and wastewater report. The floor is yours, sir.
I'm a little disappointed. A little deflated. Oh, well. First of all, I just want to thank, there was the Perth County Children's Water Festival last Sunday. The town put that on with the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, I believe. We participated. It was well attended, and thank you for having us there. It was very well done. Is it still on? Just okay. Should it be red or green? Sorry. Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, Your Worship and members of council, I am pleased to present the first quarter operational report for 2025 for the St. Mary's Water and Wastewater System. With me tonight is Ms. Susan Budden, our Business and Development Manager, and I'm going to start with the water report. During this quarter, there was one adverse water quality incident with staff taking over 130 bacteriological and chemical samples. The adverse water quality incident report was for sodium. Sodium is required to be tested once every 60 months, or which is equivalent to 5 years. Even though there's no maximum allowable concentration for sodium, anything above 20 milligrams per liter is required to be reported to the MECP and the Huron Perth Health Unit. And this is done to inform health practitioners of sodium levels for people with sodium-reduced diets. Okay. Under the maintenance, there was only one major maintenance completed for the water system this quarter, which was the chlorine booster pumps were replaced at wells number 1 and 2. In the distribution system, we had 3 water main breaks repaired this quarter. One was on Church Street North and Station Street. The other was Wellington Street North and Witter East. And the last one was at 27 Pelletier Road. We had one frozen hydrant that we had thawed. One new water service was installed on Witter Street. And other than a few internal plumbing issues and water shut-offs, there was nothing else to report. Is there any questions upon the water report?
Okay, questions? Councilor Luna.
Thank you, Worship. Regarding the sodium incident, we do it every 5 years, which to me doesn't seem often enough because it could have been that high for the last 4.5 years, for all we know, correct? So you did your reporting, but I don't recall seeing anything anywhere of it being made public. So whose responsibility is that to make it public?
That's the health unit's responsibility, and they inform the local practitioners, so they know sodium levels are high for their sodium-restricted diets. So anyone, I'm just going to speak generally. Perth County, we're all groundwater systems. Sodium is naturally in the bedrock that we pull the water from, so it dissolves in there. So we are between 30 and 50 milligrams per liter. So in comparison, just to make everything level, I anticipated this question. So I'm just doing it like for a 2% cup of milk, it's 121 milligrams of sodium. So if you compare that into liters, that's 484 milligrams per liter compared. So I said we're 30 to 50, so I'm just going to say it's 40 in St. Mary's if you blend everything together. So 484 for a liter of milk of sodium. Chocolate milk is 696 milligrams per liter. Cheddar cheese, 1.5 ounces of cheddar cheese is 322 milligrams. So that's probably 3 cubes of cheddar cheese. 2 large eggs boiled is 125 milligrams of sodium. And everyone's favorite peanut butter, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter is 139 milligrams of sodium. So when we talk 139 for 2 tablespoons of peanut butter compared to our 40 milligrams per liter, that's just to bring it into terms, okay? It's just something the ministry does so people with maybe heart conditions and sodium-reduced diets know that it's in the water and they should be careful. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Further questions?
Any other questions?
Councilor Pridham?
Yes.
Yes, I was looking at the raw water monitoring, and I noticed that, you've taken 36 samples, and our well 2 and well 3 were always at a consistent 0, which means that there's no contamination from groundwater or anything like that in our wells, and the other one was just like 0 to 3% coliform. So our wells are all very, I guess, protected and secure as they are.
Yeah, a lot of the water, I've worked in other municipalities, and groundwater, I've often found you get very little E. coli or coliforms. But we do have to add the chlorine due to Walkerton, which is just the anniversary, I believe, this week. We had, just as a proactive, if there is a coliform or an E. coli, we have the chlorine residual there to kill any bacteria.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of comforting to know that the water coming in is, I just found it kind of comforting to know that the water coming in was really, good and clean and clear, water, and then we treat it and it goes out into the system. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Very good water system here and in the surrounding areas.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Okay, the wastewater
Okay,
report, please.
I'll move on to the wastewater report. The wastewater treatment plant performed well in the first quarter, with the exception of one total suspended solid objective exceedance in January due to precipitation, and one CBOD final effluent exceedance in March. The flows at the wastewater treatment plant were at 91% of its rated capacity for this quarter due to high precipitation and snowmelt conditions in January and March of this year. So if you look at page 7, figure 2, we've got a chart there for days outside our normal operating conditions. So January, we had 5 days outside our normal operating conditions, and March, we had 14 days outside. So that's almost half the month we were over our capacity, which, it's a little harder for us to treat the sewage with that much flow going through, okay? The major maintenance at the wastewater treatment plant can be seen on page 4 of the report. We replace a magnetic flow meter in the Listec process at the sewage treatment plant. We replace an ORP sensor and probe on the aeration tanks at the wastewater facility. The main electrical breaker was replaced at the sewage plant. That was part of the sewage upgrades at the plant. Our odor control unit came online on March 12th, and the new grit removal system came online March 19th, and we replaced a baffle plate on one of the overflow chambers. Final effluent summary. Other than high flows in January and March causing some issues, the wastewater treatment plant performed well over the quarter. Is there any questions on the wastewater?
Questions from council? Councilor Craig Mao?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Mark, so with that one exceedance on the biological chemical oxygen demand,
Yes.
I mean, is that normal because isn't it over like a 5-day average or?
We were scratching our head on that one. I'm 99.9% sure that was a lab error. Usually when you have an exceedance like that, all your other parameters are also over. All the other parameters were at normal levels. So we called the lab, but by the time they had done the test, like you said, it's a 5-day test. So they went back and tested it, but it was unreliable. So normally we've never seen anything that high before, and we questioned them on it. They retested, but it was past its 5 days. And that's easily explainable to the ministry when they come and do their yearly inspection.
Okay, thank you. Further questions from council? I see the odor system took a little bit longer to get up and running. Is it running well? Is it too soon to know yet? Or?
No, we're noticing a difference now. It takes a bit for the odor control unit, it's bacterial, so the bacteria has to build up to remove the hydrogen sulfide odor. But we're noticing a big difference now. You used to get out of your truck and you'd get a whiff right at the sewage plant, and we're noticing a difference now. So It's only been online for maybe, what, 2.5, 3 months now, so
So it could get better yet.
hopefully, yes. Yes.
And as far as construction and finishing up the problem?
Construction, you know, we've had a few glitches with new equipment. We're working through them. But equipment, we're just moved into the building, the admin building this week. So I want to thank you guys for building that. It's quite pleasant to walk into. Now we have some air conditioning and it's insulated. I think on the old building, maybe 2 out of the 5 baseboard heaters work. So yeah, this is really quite a nice change. So we appreciate you guys building that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so they're just, as I said, sorry, they're just finishing up some curbs and gutters. Just the final ones, final things are being done now.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
All right, anything further from council? Okay, thank you both for attending
Okay.
this evening. We appreciate your report.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so the suggested motion is that the presentation from the Ontario Clean Water Agency regarding the first quarter 2025 water and wastewater reporting be received. Someone going to move that motion, moved by Councillor Edney, seconded by Councillor Craigmile. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6 is the acceptance of minutes. We have a few minutes to approve this evening. The first being the regular council meeting from May 13th, 2025, as printed in your package. Are there any errors, omissions, or problems with the minutes? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll seek a motion the May 13th, 2025 regular council meeting minutes be approved by council. Someone willing to move that? Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded Councillor Lucas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. The next set of minutes is with regard to strategic priorities meeting from May 20th, and there were 2 items that will be raised for consideration that were discussed at strategic priorities. So are there any errors, omissions, or problems with the minutes as printed? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll seek a motion that the May 20th, 2025 Strategic Priorities Committee meeting minutes be received and that minute items 4.2 and 4.3 be raised for consideration. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Allward, seconded by Councillor Edney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. So the first item with regards to strategic priorities that was raised was with regards to the U.S. tariff situation. I'll put the motion on the floor that staff be directed to continue to monitor the U.S. tariff situation and bring back further recommendations if warranted. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Lucas, seconded by Councillor Allward. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 6.2.2 was with regards to the Witter Street naturalization area. The motion was such that council directs staff to abandon the Witter Street naturalization project and honor the legacy verbal agreement to maintain the Witter Street East Parklands as passive use open recreational space with finished cut turf. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Craigmile, seconded. Councillor Lucas. Any discussion? I have one item I want to raise as a result of this, and just if staff can comment with regards to the trail. There was an offer by a local company to help us in extending the trail. Is that still under consideration, Mr. Kittmer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I spoke with Mr. Kelly today. It's not something that could happen in this season, he believes, at this point in time. But if council was still believed that a trail extension was important in that area and fit the bill of a passive use, he would go and reconnect, and he believed that the offer to do the work for in-kind costs only would stand, and he would be prepared to have a capital budget sheet ready for approval for 2026.
Okay, any thoughts from council? Councillor Pridham?
I was just wondering if that disturbs the passive use?
Through your worship, I don't think so. I think, again, passive use to me is, I think the intent was it wasn't to be used for a place for active programming, like the 2 examples that we've seen historically were disc golf and then soccer. I think most of us would say that a walking trail and using it for impromptu activities like that, it still meets the test of passive.
would that be something that is kind of run by or asked of the parties that donated the land?
We would take direction from council on that. I think when Jed and I talked about it today, we didn't necessarily feel we'd have to go back out to the public. There was some interest in the trail, understanding that it would have to be relocated. I do say that appreciating and understanding that you probably would frustrate some individuals from having a trail there and probably make some individuals happy from having a trail there. Like we saw in the results, it was about 50-50. If you preferred for us to go back out and do some consultation and say, we've abandoned naturalization, but we'd like to cut in the trail, I'm sure we could organize that. Or if you just prefer to make the decision and say we think a trail makes sense, again, we're happy to take that direction as well.
Councilor Pridham?
Yeah, I'm really not needing a consultation or meaning that for the community. I'm just wondering if the two parties, the legacy donation and the families involved, if they should just be given a courtesy notice and that's our intent. And if there was a comment, then we would probably get it at that point, but at least being notified.
What's council's thought with regards to a trail? I mean, I don't know how you passively use something if you can't get to it, so it just makes sense to me that there is a trail, there was some concern about naturalization, and I think the trail is the next logical step. If that's the residences for passive use, then somebody should be able to get to it. Councilor Luna?
Thank you, Richard. And by a trail, we're not talking about a cemented sidewalk, we're just talking about a dirt trail, is that correct? Okay.
Just to be clear, I support the trail, but I just, we received some letters and a lot of information about past activities that were thought of in the area, and then they weren't consulted and they were, receiving the information secondhand. So I thought maybe a courtesy would be a nice outreach.
Councilor Craigmile?
Thank you, Worship. I believe, as I recall, looking at the diagram that we got previously at Strategic Priorities, it was just to finish the trail to an actual road. So, I mean, it makes good sense for passive to, finish that trail. And I have no issue just informing the residents that this is what we're going to do, because it is passive.
Councilor Howard?
Thanks, Your Worship. I guess I would just say, since this did come before the Green Advisory Committee, the trail extension was, in large part, the reason behind the support for this project before it was turfed, I guess. So, yeah, no, I'm totally on board.
Any further comments from council? You want us to add that to the clerk? Would it be? Do we need direction on this, or is this understood by staff? How would they? Okay. Sure, if you don't mind, please. Yeah. So the suggested motion would be that council direct staff to abandon the Witter Street Naturalization Project with the exception of the proposed trail extension and honor the legacy verbal agreement to maintain the Witter Street East Parkland as passive use open recreation space with finished cut turf. Councilor Craigmile, is that amenable for amendment? Councilor Lucas? Okay, any discussion with regards to the change? I'm just going to write this in if I can. That's it. Yep, it did. Okay, any further questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question then. All in favor? Motion is carried. Up next is the minutes from the special council meeting, May 21st, 2025. Any errors or omissions or problems? Councillor Luna?
Thank you, Worship. Just a minor thing, but I think the minutes reflect that members of council were present in the council chambers and we weren't. So I don't know if that should be adjusted.
Okay, anything further? That amendment is noted then. So I'll seek a motion that the May 21st, 2025 special council meeting minutes be approved by council as amended. Someone like to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded. Councillor Edney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 7, correspondence. The first one is from Minister Flack, who's been very busy lately, regarding the Protect Ontario by Building Faster and Smarter Act made. The correspondence is printed. Any questions, comments with regards to this correspondence? Okay, I'll seek a motion in the correspondence from Minister Flack regarding the Protect Ontario by Building Faster and Smarter Act be received. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Lucas, second by Councillor Allward. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Second item is from the Perth County Federation of Agriculture regarding urban expansion position. Any comments or questions with regards to this correspondence? Councillor Pridham?
I was reading it over and thought that really doesn't affect us within our boundaries of the town, but I'm not sure if that's correct or not. You know, it limits expansion, but within our boundaries, that doesn't eliminate us from changing use of agricultural land. No, I mean, that suggestion, it's a suggestion from, yeah, it's kind of interesting because, you know, Perth County expansion, anything that would happen within if this was how it was followed, could be quite limiting, but yeah, just interesting. Thank you.
Okay, anything further with regards to correspondence? All right, then I'll seek a motion that the correspondence from the Perth County Federation of Agriculture regarding its position on urban expansion be received. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Craigmile, second by Councillor Allward. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. And item 7.3, we received correspondence from the St. Mary's Ministerial Association, which is on the docket in the administration report. Any questions or comments with regards to the correspondence for now? Okay, I'll seek a motion that the correspondence from the St. Mary's Ministerial Association regarding a request for consideration of participation in the 2025 Heritage Festival be received and deferred for consideration as part of staff report Admin 27-2025. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Edney, seconded. Councillor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, first up, item 8.1.1, Administration Monthly Report. Mr. Kittmer, please.
So thank you, Your Worship. So just briefly touching on a couple of points in my monthly report. So the downtown service location review, we are still actively working on it, although we haven't had a committee meeting in quite a while. So there's been a fairly standard update in my report here, talking to the fact that we received our first draft final concept of the building on April 9th. Since that time, there's been a considerable amount of work internally, especially by our project consultant working with our building and development team, as well as all staff who represent stakeholders in understanding the current concept layout and trying to make revisions before we go to the committee. So essentially what we want to do is get ourselves to a point where we only have to have A-Link do one master revision before we come to council and we have a fairly solid concept. We had a great meeting today where I think the actual concept for the building in terms of the physical and spatial layout is almost finished at the staff level portion of it. What we're now actively working on, because this is it's always been difficult for me to describe, and I always kind of talk to council that I'm a little bit flaky on this project, but it's truly a chicken and egg project. I know council has always been pressing me about, how are we going to use the building? How is it going to be operated? But it's always been difficult for me to answer those questions until I know what is going in there. But those two conversations are inextricably linked. Now that we know what the building will look like and what will be going in there, we're really starting to talk about the how. We had a great meeting today where we brought all of the programming staff together and helped them navigate a conversation about their vision of how they would use the building on day one. And it's safe for me to say that there's a lot of excitement at the staff level for what that building could be, and just our own internal uses, including the community services and the museum and the library. Like, we could see that building being busy and bustling on day one. So I do hope to have that vision very much crystallized and communicate a bit more faith in the project for council when we come in probably about July. I expect in June, I'll go back to the committee level and likely give them an understanding of what the layout of the building looks like, what a rough vision for the operating concept is going to look like, and then they'll help us refine the project with the questions that they ask, and then we'll come to this table likely in mid-July. In terms of, my only other update I wanted to touch on was another strategic priority of ours is our transportation and our transportation needs assessment. So again, we're working in the background on this project, and it's getting very important for us to set a date for a public open house. And I know you'll hear from Stephanie tonight that they're planning an open house on the pool project, and it's likely we'll try and align those two dates because the transportation folks want to have a natural kind of traffic event that's already happening where they will come. So look to that and look to our social media and all of our marketing. I expect you'll see this project really kick off in the next 1 to 2 weeks with a push out of surveys, a push out of open houses, and then the consultant will attend council at SPC on June 17th to ask you your thoughts on local transportation. Within the clerk's department, Jenna tells me it's business as normal, and there's lots of good stats there. She's happy to take any questions, so we're open to any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Mr. Kittmer? Okay, no news is good news. All right, so the suggested motion is that amend 26-2025 May monthly report administration be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Edney, seconded by Councillor Luna. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Next item is with regard to the St. Mary's Ministerial Association's request to participate in the Heritage Festival. Mr. Kittmer, please.
Yep, so thank you, Your Worship. And Council, I'll just take a little bit of time to explain how this letter came to be on the agenda and what's being asked of you tonight. So in 2019 and prior, Heritage Festival did include a vendor, which was a church. After the 2019 event, staff received complaints from patrons that they felt the participation by a local religious institution was inappropriate, and that the actions of some of the members that participated in the festival were inappropriate. So since that time, at the staff level, we've taken the position that religious institutions not participate in Heritage Festival. From a practical perspective, immediately following that, we had COVID, and we've had now, this will be the third year where we've had that policy at the staff level implemented. This year, a request came forward through the mayor asking if we were going to maintain that approach, and the answer that was communicated back was that yes, staff felt that was the most important decision for this point in time. But what we had changed was that at the staff level, we believe that there is value in local and maybe not even local religious institutions participating in our events. They have good heritage value, good cultural value that they'll add. It's just how they participate in our events we have to be very careful about. So our decision this year was to communicate back that yes, we would like to maintain our continued position that there is no participation in 2025, but also communicated back that we'd be working on a policy that would dictate how all vendors, in fact, would participate in our events in 2026, including religious institutions. We don't come to this position lightly. Some of the rationale in the position we've taken is that it draws from what we've learned, especially through the legal advice we received on our commemoration policy. So as we've thought about the position at the staff level, we know that individuals have a right to the freedom of religion, but also the freedom from religion. and it's a very difficult and layered and complex matter, and it's always difficult to find and strike a balance. We know that as the town or as the state that we have a duty of religious neutrality, and we can't be seen to be endorsing any one religion over any other. And so you either have to consider universal design, or in my report I've talked about a universal no to maintain that neutrality. And then within that, there's also an expectation that we create safe and neutral public spaces that are free from judgment, coercion, all of that good stuff. So when we're faced with this position, there's no easy answer. It's difficult. If you say no, religious institutions can't participate, you open yourself up to claims of discrimination on religious grounds, and then freedom of religious complaints. If you say yes, you open yourself up to complaints against your state neutrality, as well as people's complaints about not having the ability to have the freedom from religion. Within case law, there's a spectrum of views on this. The Ontario Human Rights Commission would encourage us to find a way to develop universal design and embrace diversity. And I think that's definitely the position at the staff level we want to take and get there eventually. My challenge and the challenge that we have right now is that we at the staff level don't understand the implications of universal design and how to build a policy that achieves universal design well enough. And we don't necessarily want to inadvertently pass a policy that then somehow infringes on somebody's rights in some way. So that was our rationale for wanting the pause and wanting to take the time over this year to develop a well-crafted policy that we then implement in 2026, again, for all vendors. In that instance, that means that we're choosing to continue to say no. And we draw our example from the Supreme Court case in Saguenay. And what they've essentially said is that in situations where universal design doesn't necessarily work, and the best way to achieve equity is just to say no because you can't control other circumstances, that's the precedent that we've taken there. So in our report, we've brought forward the letter from the Ministerial Association. They're encouraging us to implement a policy this year that would allow participation in some way, shape, or form. And in their correspondence, they have proposed a certain policy. At the staff level, we've given you a couple of options. For option one, it's essentially maintaining the status quo, that the answer would be no for 2025. But for 2026, that staff would be directed to make sure we have a policy in place that allows, all vendors to participate in our events under a common set of rules. Again, the basis of that recommendation is that this topic is sufficiently complex that we don't understand the implications of our decisions today, that we're defaulting back to that. It's easier to say universal no in the circumstance. Because there is fairly well-tested case law which should support us there. However, if council does feel that participation is important for 2025, what we've encouraged you to do is that you would move forward and pass some sort of ad hoc policy at this point in time to help at least guide participation in the event, again, in all of our events by all of our vendors. And within the staff report, I put forward a couple of ideas of how this might look. Again, my caution is that this is not well vetted. This was something that I pulled together on an hour on a Friday morning, and there are still I have concerns about this draft policy that I have on, if it was to be implemented for 2025, that it may also infringe on people's rights. It may actually even infringe on religious freedoms, and it may infringe on people's right to freedom from religion. In my staff report, what I've noted is that I can't recommend that you adopt the policy put forward by the Ministerial Association because by default it would exclude certain religions and certain religious groups, which we can't do because we have that duty of neutrality. So again, I leave it before you. This is again one of those situations where the community members have the right to ask for council to reconsider a staff decision, and we have some options here, and you can choose your own options as well. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you for that report. Comments from council? Questions, comments? Councilor Brittam.
Thank you. Having restrictions like that, does that allow us to remove someone that would show up because it's not allowed within that festival?
If a person was to show up and set up if we were to have restrictions and let's, again, hypothetically, let's say you went down option 2 and you went with the policy as written, if a vendor was to show up, it would give you grounds to then police the event. The challenge that we have is that the event is primarily staffed by a few staff members and then a lot of volunteers. So you're going to be asking volunteers to staff the event or to police it, or you're formally calling the police. If a person walks down the public road allowance with a megaphone and is expressing their religious views, the police have always taken the approach, because it happens outside of town hall all of the time, that a member of the public has the right to freely express their opinions in a peaceful way, and as long as they're doing that and they're not perpetrating discrimination or hate in any way in an obvious manner, and they're on the public road allowance, it's very difficult for them to enforce a trespass.
So if I may continue, in option 1, when it's restricted, would that then allow us to, like I said, remove?
Yes, in option 1, if that was to occur, what would typically happen is we'd still call the police and we would make a complaint of nuisance. And the Stratford Police have always been pretty good to support us, especially when it's our events and it's a nuisance, to pull the person aside and have a conversation with them.
The churches with their establishments are maybe welcome to open up something on their own grounds to support the Heritage Festival, and then people can come and go as they choose, but not necessarily downtown in a booth. Is that an option that they could support and maybe like to do?
Again, if there's an activity happening on private property, we likely wouldn't promote it as being part of the event, but again, they're welcome to do that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, so that might be it. Oh, sorry. That may be an option for them to be involved but not involved, if people choose to go that way and visit, they could.
Further questions, comments? Councilor Craigmile?
Thank you, Worship. So when I read the ministerial letter, and I understand exactly what they're asking for, but they're asking for us to investigate a current policy. I didn't see anything where they wanted to put a fundraiser refresh, I didn't see any of that. So I think with your option 1 to get it done right this year, I mean, in my mind, I think that's meeting what they're asking is so that depending on what the outcome is, at least you're looking at it to develop a policy to make it all correct. Is that not the way I read it?
Again, I'll just share that at the staff level, we have not had an organization come forward and request participation. And I'm going to put an asterisk beside that because I forgot to mention something in my long-winded deliberation. I believe the request came via the mayor. The one asterisk that I have to put beside it is that the Salvation Army is a faith-based organization, and they have participated in the event for the past several years. And when I explored that conversation with staff about, where our vendor form says that, faith-based organizations can't participate, like why and how was the Salvation Army allowed? And at the staff level, it's as simple as a reason as they didn't view. I think many of us forget that the Salvation Army is a faith-based organization. They viewed them as participating in their role as a charity and being a food bank. So when the Salvation Army shows up, they're participating as a food bank. However, what's fair is fair in my mind, and if I believe that if council was to continue to go down the path of option 1 and maintain our past practice, we would have to have a conversation with the Salvation Army and talk about their participation this year, because I can't stand here and say, that the town needs to be neutral, but then allow a faith-based organization to participate. They may have to stop their participation for a year, which is when I talk about this being complex and layered, this is what we're talking about.
Councilor Albert?
Thanks, Your Worship. Honestly, I was just going to say that I look at this the same way as Councilor Craigmile. I think we need to take some time on this. There's a lot of nuance here, and I don't really feel like we should be opening up a can of worms that we're not necessarily prepared for. So I'd like to see a policy developed and returned on this.
Yeah, I'm going to pass the chair to the deputy mayor now because I'd like to speak to this. First of all, I want to say I don't think the world's ended because the Salvation Army participated in the Heritage Festival the last 2 or 3 years. Second of all, I want to say that it's a public festival, and I don't think, we don't endorse people selling candles. We don't endorse the people, you know, that are flogging whatever on the street. It's a public festival. We have worked hard as a council to make this an inclusive community. And I think by denying religious institutions' involvement, I think we're sending a signal that we're not inclusive. The other thing is that there's no guarantee that the policy will come back next year and say that we can have institutions, right? So by deferring it, we're not making a decision. Me as the mayor, you know, personally, I was upset when they got rid of religion. I think that's a ridiculous verdict that was given by the Supreme Court, but it was a Supreme Court decision, and I respect that. But the reality to me is that I'm in favor of supporting the Ministerial Association at a time when I think that we need them like never before for the work they're doing in our community. I do not think that having a billboard or having a public institution downtown means that we're endorsing them or infringing on public neutrality. I think that we control the festival. I think that we've had our own volunteers that we've asked to leave for our festival. I think staff's done a good job. So I think council should make a stand. I think council should have a St. Mary's solution and allow the policy as suggested by the Ministerial Association to stand this evening.
All right, any other questions or comments from council? Councilor Craigmile?
I think when I said something 5 minutes ago, I didn't realize that the Salvation Army was already participating. And that's a real issue in my mind because their participation is directly related to food insecurity. And I would never stand in the way of that. So I think I tend to agree with what the mayor has said, although we all know what we might expect somewhere, you know, and I hate to put that on some volunteers. So I'm really torn on this. I mean, I definitely don't want to go to the Salvation Army and tell them they can't participate for food drive. So, is there any other, I guess we're into that ad hoc thing where we got to put something together to allow it. I guess that's kind of where I'm currently leaning.
Any other questions, comments? Is there anybody that would like to try and add something to the potential ad hoc motion we're looking at here?
I'll just add, I appreciate what the mayor has said. I would say as council, you cannot adopt the policy that the Ministerial Association has recommended because it, by its nature, is it excludes other religions. So, but it's by its very nature, you would be violating your responsibility of state neutrality. So again, universal design means all religions can participate, even those that we can't think of today who may or may not be in our town or may not be a member of the Ministerial Society. So if you are going down the thought of an ad hoc policy, I would say you would set that one aside and work towards something more closely to what's suggested in the staff report as some terms and conditions. I will say that just in the 24 or 48 hours since it was drafted, like I have identified some flaws and there would have to be some updates to it. So if you go down that path, I think if that's a path council's going down, I think this is almost like an SBC meeting where I think you have to kind of have some consensus whether you want to go with option 1 or option 2. If you want to go option 2, we need to put something up on the screen and kind of wordsmith it together.
When the festival is organized and the street locations are selected, people are, the staff controls that element?
Yeah, so typically what I understand is so we have a vendor application form and Andre's up on the screen. He can help me a bit more here. But businesses have the right to possess the space in front of their store, and then I think the other vendors are fitted in where there's space.
And further to that, so we would control the locations and the occupied space, I suppose, of anyone that was to come. And if they weren't registered and accepted, then they wouldn't be allowed to do that.
I guess technically, yes. I don't think we've ever run into an instance where a booth has shown up and they've not been permitted.
Any other questions? Councilor Luna?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Could we put something in it that with parameters that whoever participates has to participate in an appropriate and respectful manner? I don't blah, blah, blah. I don't know what else to add to that, but those terms should be in there.
And and forgive me, I only have my printed report. I don't have the page of the agenda, but it's it would be the third page of my report where you can start seeing that we have this ad hoc that talks about, you know, the need to submit a vendor summary, and then we'd have the right to refuse approval or revoke or suspend approval where any of these conditions aren't met. The challenge that we have, that I have right now, is it still continues to be C. So C is consistent with other precedents that we have in St. Mary's. So if you look at our commemoration policy, the decision on the commemoration policy was no religion whatsoever. When you look at our community grant policy, it also deems religious organizations to be ineligible to receive community grant funds, but with an asterisk. And that's where there's a good universal design there. It says religious organizations can't use community grant funds or can't receive them unless they are using them for a purpose that is not religious instruction, religious programming, all those good things. I only flag this because the way C is written right now, the discomfort it gives me is it essentially says a religious organization can participate in the event but cannot be a religious organization. So it depends on how they want to participate. There may be a way to soften this. Again, if you're going down this way where you can say something to the effect of religious organizations are permitted to participate if they can demonstrate their participation will be on a secular basis, not non-secular, because secular means free from religion, and is aligned with the purpose of the event. So that's the way others have gotten around this. But again, by telling a religious organization that they can participate in something but have to be secular, again, takes their right to actually express their religious freedoms out of it, which is why I continue to say that this is why it's complicated, and I don't have good answers for you because the turnaround's is just too tight.
Anyway, I think we're, as council, quite concerned about the fact that people are feeling like they're being imposed on, they're being maybe harassed or you know, feeling uncomfortable, made to feel uncomfortable. So that's, you know, people that show up, whatever religion, fine, but how do we control that component? That's the part we need to understand.
And again, so this is when it goes. This is where I said there's a balance here, right? So no matter what decision we make, somebody will come forward or could come forward and say that we're infringing on their rights. So when I show up to the event, I might want to go and participate and engage with, you know, vendors of religious basis, but others may not, and they have that right to freedom from religion, and that was the complaint that drove all of us at the outset, was people didn't feel comfortable, they didn't feel having this proactive nature. You will then say, well, then how can you control its staff? And at this point in time, I don't have a good answer for you, because the only way we can police it is on a reactive basis. If somebody makes a complaint, and then, you know, either the event organizer or one of our staff or volunteers would have to go and have a conversation with those individuals. And that's why I continue to fall back to, as much as, you know, the Ontario Human Rights Commission says, do your best to find universal yes. What, again, that Saguenay case teaches us is that do your best, but if you can't control the outcomes, your best answer is no. And I don't.
But isn't it just as simple as if you don't like what's at a particular spot, you walk on by? Is that oversimplifying it? But isn't that just, you know, common sense? If I don't like what you're selling, I'm not going to stop and look at it.
I just wanted to offer a comment on that, actually, and it kind of spins off what Councilor Pridham was saying, was that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, a number of the concerns we were getting was that there were people like passing out and distributing materials in the street, more or less, at the last time that this happened when we got the complaints. So I guess my vision of it, if we're going to go down this road, would be to have it be, as you're saying, like, keep your stuff at your booth. Like, if people want to come up and engage with you, then that is their right and their choice. And so maybe that sort of style of, you know, not getting around, but keeping it to your vendor's spot.
Yeah, I go back to that, respectfully, I think if we, you know, go down that path, I mean, the Salvation Army doesn't qualify, because that's their religious purpose, is to help those in need through food banks and so forth. But I think in public events, having them there doesn't mean we endorse them. And I go back to that, and I think this is quite different than the Saguenay case. And the reality is that there are other municipalities, I looked them up in different things. We do have a list, and I didn't bring it, it's on my desk still, a list of qualifications that, you know, that they can kick people out if they're this, that, and yes, it goes back to volunteers. But the reality is that if the St. James Anglican Church wanted to sell hot dogs, I don't think we'd have any trouble with that, or would we? Because they're gonna raise money to further religious purposes. So we got a problem with that? I don't. So the reality is, I don't think by participation in a public festival, it's an endorsement, and I don't think that applies. So I think the reality is that there may have been a couple bad apples that soured things, but to me, this is about inclusion. This is about including people that are a big part of our community. And I think that, you know, I think the protection from religion, I don't think is meant to be applied in this fashion. I think it has to do with, you know, if we have a booth of atheists, or the reality is that we don't endorse what they're selling necessarily. So I just personally don't have a problem, and I'll go back to, again, I have no problem endorsing what the Ministerial Association has suggested, but I'm willing to see where council wants to go with things. I know I'm in the minority on this, and that's fine too.
Any other questions or comments from council? Councilor Luna.
Well, I think I'm going to have to disagree with the mayor in that the ministerial suggestions does restrict the group. They have to have a membership, and I don't know if there's other religions in town that don't have memberships, and a regular place of worship. I don't know who that excludes, so I think that might be a concern.
Yeah, so the great example that was used some time ago in a completely different situation was Rastafarianism. So Rastafarianism is a recognized religion. So if the local Rastafarian group wants to come forward and have a booth there, technically they would be faith-based. But if we were to adopt the Ministerial Association's list, because they have an exclusive list of who their members are, we would have to deny them. And right away, now we're not practicing neutrality in any way, and we are violating their charter rights. So it's unfortunately the policy that's been put forward by the Ministerial Association, you would have to set aside because it does not comply with the charter. You would have to find, and this is what I keep coming back to, is if you're going to say you want the people to participate, and I think we're all saying that, I think that Stafford is saying we're prepared, our recommendation is to take some time, have a well thought out policy, and have participation be in 2026 and wait the year. But if you want people to participate, it has to be universal design is universal, yes, with some rules. So again, if the local atheist group comes forward and wants to participate and sell hot dogs, you have to say yes. Because their participation is no different than the United Churches at that point in time.
So our current enrollment into the festival, can we just leave it status quo, and anybody that wants to, and church, any organization can come and then be accepted? Do we have to go through this extra policy?
You don't have to. You don't have to put a policy in place. You could just pass a policy decision tonight that says to staff to, for our vendor application form, for us to delete whichever it is, item number 7, which prohibits religious-based vendors from participating, and then it would just, people would just be able to come and participate. The risk again that you have there is that you have no established rules for how that's participating, so that you would open yourself up to what happened in the past in 2019. So in 2019, in the very last one, it was a couple of things. It was a table with popcorn, because I remember this one, and if you went over and got your free popcorn, you got a pamphlet. But there was also a second vendor who stood outside of Town Hall and drew portraits, and when you received your portrait, you got a scripture on the back of it. And those are the two things that offended people the most.
But again, don't participate, don't go to that vendor. I don't understand how you can be offended by. Town has a green committee which supports a particular political party. I mean, if you want to get, really technical about stuff, I just don't understand how you can be offended if you can walk on by. They're not surrounding you, they're not, ganging up on you.
I think what I would say is that when I continue to say that this is a deep, complex issue, is that though there are individuals in the world who have deeply held religious beliefs, but there are also those who have deeply held beliefs that the state should not have religion involved in any way, right? So if you're a person who believes that a public event on public property organized by the state should not have religion involved, then you're going to be offended by their participation anyways, whether or not you have the free right to go and choose. And what we all forget is that that belief exists out there. And what, again, case law and the charter says is that neutral public spaces means that everybody has the right to enjoy and believe whatever they want freely, whether it's religion, whether it's the belief that there should be no religion. And that's why this is so difficult. And in the world we exist in today, where it's highly opinionated, highly polarized, you're going to see more of this. And there are those who will show up to our event and could see church booths there who are deeply frustrated and angry with us. And then you could make a decision that says, no, you can't participate, churches or organizations, and they are going to be deeply frustrated with us. You're really in a no-win situation here without a good answer.
Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a lot going on here. I guess to follow up with what you just said, Brent, is that we could get pushback either way. Somebody's not going to be happy. When I first read the report, I for sure didn't have Salvation Army in mind, and now I'm like, that's a struggle for me, because they stand on the street corner and collect money at Christmas. They run the food bank. So that becomes my sticking point. I think I can deal with somebody being upset that there's religious activities or a religious booth going on, and to Councillor Luna's point, don't participate. If that's not what you want to deal with, then don't go. Same as if you don't want to buy a candle, don't go to the booth. To me, that's pretty straightforward, but for sure the Salvation Army is sticking in my head quite a bit. So,
Councillor Pruitt.
As a council organizer, is there requirements for people to put up signage so that people know what they're expecting when they come towards a booth? So they're not surprised and they can have the opportunity to walk by.
No, it doesn't look like there is one in our current vendor application form. But again, if you were to go down option 2, when we're talking about creating an ad hoc policy for all of our, again, this is for all vendors or all participants in all of our events for this year, we could easily add that.
Yeah, because that would make it clear that you're approaching a certain type of group. You don't want candles and you also don't want this.
Yeah.
You walk by.
Would it be simpler if we took a recess? I worked with the clerk for a few minutes just to craft what that resolution for option 2 might look like.
Yeah, I think I'm going to call for a recess. We'll take 10 minutes, please. All right, I'm calling the meeting back to order. We took a 10-minute recess. We have reviewed a motion. Would anybody like to comment on the motion in front of us here? Councillor Edney, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't necessarily want to comment on the motion in front of us. I would like to comment on the overall report here. So no matter what side of the table you're on this, I think we all recognize that this is an extremely sensitive issue. One of the recommendations that we were offered was a thorough and thoughtful consideration from our staff to work through and create a new policy that would, because as a town, as a corporation, inclusivity is one of the most important things to us. As a matter of fact, we fly a number of flags just to make sure that people understand that as they enter our geographical location, that we are an inclusive community. I would suggest that there's at least 2 churches that I can think of right now whose, within their fundamental beliefs, are anti-gay policies or anti-gay beliefs. I don't know what kind of message that sends to the 10+% of our population. So what I think is important is that our staff, within the verbiage of the letter we got from the Ministerial Services Association, there is no pressing matter. No, there is no timeline set up for us. They would like to be involved. We would like to put together a respectful, thoughtful policy that we can let them digest and come back to us and say, yes, those are completely acceptable. I think taking a 10-minute recess and throwing something together, and I have a lot of respect for our staff and for the councillors as well, doesn't represent the kind of respect that we typically give to issues of this magnitude. And I think if we want to be responsible councillors, we don't make decisions snap like that. We spend a lot of time working through them. And we have a very good staff who are in touch with the sensitive subjects in our community, and they're connected to our community. And I believe, given a decent amount of time, that they can come up with a policy and work it through with the ministerial services. I'm not opposed to them being involved, but I would like to see something in place. As a matter of fact, I work with a number of the churches. I work with the Ministerial Association on a number of issues, whether it's through the United Way, whether it's being the MC at many of their events. I'm involved in a lot of their fundraising, but I also believe that a proper, well thought out policy is what is needed. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Councillor Pridham.
Question for the clerk. Is the current policy adequate? When was it last reviewed? When does this, or could we just add on and would it be fine?
So through your worship, we don't currently have a municipal policy that speaks to participation in our municipal events. So we don't have a global policy that says, the Town of St. Mary's municipal events policy, and here's the rules for any municipal event that you would want to come in and be a participant in. This is how you behave. What we have right now is for this. Again, we're focused on participation in the Heritage Festival, and I think what we're suggesting is that we need to take a more global look at this. That anything we pass, then it just kind of governs. If you pass something quickly tonight, or excuse me, that's unfair to council. An ad hoc policy tonight, then that would govern participation in all municipally organized events for the rest of the year until we have a more formal policy. For Heritage Festival specifically, we do have a vendor application form that does have, it's kind of a mix of requirements of what a vendor, if you're participating in the vendor market space, like the space you're allowed to occupy, how big it is, the fact there's no hydro, that we won't tolerate harassing behavior and those kinds of things. But it's specific only to Stonetown Heritage Festival. And again, this is one where it does say, again, based on our decision after 2019, where it does say religion-based vendors are not permitted. So we have a policy, it's even our own policy that we're working with at the staff level is ad hoc, but it's only, it only relates to Stonetown Heritage Festival. At the staff level, why we want a policy to govern all events, it's not just religion, it's about, when you look at all of the events that we need to have some kind of guidance in place about what we can and can't approve. A good example was in the fall, the Heritage Festival, or no, not the Heritage Festival, what was that? Oh my goodness. I'm losing what it is, but it was during the provincial or federal election, a political party wanted to participate. What was that? Heritage Fair, yes, yeah, a political party wanted to participate in the Heritage Fair when the polling stations were open. And we had nothing but common sense to base our decision on, and we said no. Because we couldn't, at that point in time, what we used to guide our decision was we couldn't find an alignment between the political party and the purpose of the event, so we said no. But again, we made that decision because we felt that was the right decision, but we exposed the corporation because we don't have a good sound policy.
Councillor Craig Moyle.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess I agree with a lot of what Councillor Edney said, except this wasn't just, maybe Brent put most of it together last Friday or whatever he said he did, but he's only really added 2 lines to what was in option 2 in our package. With those lines, I'll just tell you, it says the religious organizations are permitted to participate in town organized events if they can demonstrate that their participation is aligned with the purpose of the event. I know how difficult it is, but I do believe that I'm going to support this motion that was just given to us, only because it is my understanding that if we don't do something like this, we're telling the Salvation Army that they cannot collect food during the current festival, and I'm 100% against that. You know, when you start talking about, everybody talks about how low our resources are at all the food banks and everything, and we can use it in town, and prices are going up and the food insecurity. I mean, there's no way I would get in the middle of that. I believe they've also said that they're going to use the rest of the year to come up with a really good policy. So it just allows religious organizations to participate this year. By the end of the year, we'll have a policy we'll be debating later on. So I'm going to support this motion.
Councillor Prudhomme.
And I just want to identify that they did add that the signage must be clear for their organization so people have an opportunity to choose to visit their booth or not.
Any other comments or questions from council on this? Councillor Lucas, please.
Thank you, through the chair. Brent, does this, I know you wanted to take the year to establish that policy. I guess my thought is, does this allow you to put something out there to see where the shortcomings could be? Like, can you use this as a, I guess, to switch your train of thought, can you use this as a positive to take this, see how this flows through the year and see what kind of issues or problems come up and attach those to a more formal policy?
That's, again, just give me a second to think about this one. My personal opinion in this does not matter because I'm your CAO. My professional obligation is to protect the corporation. My view is the best option to protect the corporation is option 1. But I know we exist in a political world and council gets to make political decisions, and I respect that highly. This policy that's in front of you, I would feel far more comfortable saying I could recommend it if it had been legally vetted. I did share a link to my report with our solicitor, and he did give me a quick call and said, Brent, I don't even know how to give you advice on this one yet because I haven't looked at it enough. So I don't have the level of comfort to say to you that you're not exposed. I know your least exposure is option 1, and I know you're opening yourselves up to some exposure in option 2. Yes, we can use it as testing ground to see what the worst case scenarios are or like how it might work. But I can't stand here and I guess I'm not going to stand here and give you the advice and say that this is the best crafted policy that we've ever had. This is something that I pulled together in 1 hour on a Friday morning because I needed to get a report on this agenda so you'd have something to at least guide this debate because of how complicated it is. A lot of it is drawn from existing precedent in both our community grant policy and our commemoration policy. I also know that we're talking about theoretical risk, and that in a small town like St. Mary's, the practical risk is probably less. And I'm also am fine to say that this is the path this is where we wanted to go. We want to achieve a place where we can get to universal design through a well-crafted policy. So if you want to do it a year earlier, this is the best case scenario for tonight. I can't, even if you were to defer this to June 10th, I might have something a little bit better than this, but not necessarily fully better. Not something that I know your solicitor would say he could recommend at this point in time, because it's going to take him a few weeks. It would take him a few weeks to do the thorough research, because he just hasn't yet.
Any other questions or comments from council or Councilor Craigmile?
I have one question that I need answered. That being said, what you just said, previously for things like the Heritage Festival, Salvation Army has participated. But this year you're willing to tell them that they're not allowed to participate for the food bank? Or would you rather do status quo and let them, I mean,
No,
you know,
no.
obviously they're-
If,
my answers,
if you choose option one and you allow a faith-based organization to participate, you are immediately violating the charter rights of all other religious-based organizations you have denied. So, but again, my job is not the most fun job in the world every once in a while, and my job, I sometimes have to give difficult advice. Again, it's fair to say that staff overlooked the fact that the Salvation Army is a faith-based organization when they were allowed to participate. They reviewed them there as their charitable purpose, and I actually think the Salvation Army's participation in the event is the perfect example of why faith-based organizations have a role in our events, because they are not just, we're not talking about, hundreds of years ago where their sole purpose is mission and spread Christianity or Islam or any of that stuff. They are heavily invested in our communities for very good charitable reasons, and I would never want to stand in the way of them being able to achieve their charitable objects. But if I have to give you advice that if you choose option one, you have to say it has to be, that's a universal no answer, and we have to maintain that, so that if we say universal no with the exception of we'll let those ones participate, then we're immediately exposed.
and Brent, I really appreciate that honest answer. And in you saying that, now you know exactly 100% why I'm gonna go option two and go with what you just drafted up.
And as I said, this is not personal for me in any way. This is, I have a professional obligation to give you the best advice I can possibly give you, and I'm doing my best to do that.
Councilor Pridham, please.
Within this, if there was someone that was disruptive, does this allow us, I know it says we can refuse or revoke or suspend an approval. Does this allow us to remove them from the event?
I think having this in, so again, I don't think you'd ever see us expect staff or the volunteers who run the event to actively police this policy, but having this on paper at least gives us something that if and when we call the police and we ask them to remove somebody from the event because they're violating this or that, now we have something on paper that we would have communicated to all event participants that the police can enforce.
All right, is there any further discussions, or is somebody willing to put a motion on the floor here?
If I ask the clerk, can she put that up on the screen? If she would, and I'm prepared to move the motion that council establishes the following ad hoc policy terms and conditions for vendors, organizations who participate in the town events in 2025. Participants in municipal events are required to submit a written summary of how they intend to participate in the event and be required to supply samples of pictures of materials, products they plan to share with the public. That their event, while participating in the event, must provide signage clearly identifying their organizations or group, etc. That the town reserve the right to refuse an approval of participation, revoke, or suspend an approval where the participation is a political party, organization, or political lobby group attempting to influence government policies. The participant intends to promote views that are contrary to the town's values, plans, policies, or bylaws. The participant intends to defame the integrity of the town, Ontario, Canada, or sovereign. The participant endorses views and ideas that promote discrimination, contempt, or hatred for any person or group based on race, ancestry, place of origin, color, ethnic origin, citizenship, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, age, marital status, family status, religion, or disability. The participant involvement does not support the goal, theme, and purpose of the municipal event. The participant engages in behaviors which may be viewed as disrespectful or harassing by the event organizer or patrons to the event. Religious organizations are permitted to participate in town-organized events if they can demonstrate that the participation is aligned with the purpose of the event, that staff report back with a formal policy outlining the terms and conditions for all vendors, organizations to participate in town events beginning in 2026. I so move, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, do I have somebody willing to second that written motion? Councillor Craigmile, are there any further discussions or comments on this matter before I call the question?
I'd like to request a recorded vote, please.
Okay. Councillor Edney?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to point out that the CAO did explain to us that we have greater exposure under that particular motion than we do under the other one. That's all. Thank you.
All right, with that, I will call the question. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Yeah, my bad.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Alward. A recorded vote has been requested by Mayor Strathy related to the recently proposed motion that was on the screen. I'll go around the horseshoe, beginning with Mayor Strathy, asking if you are in support or if you oppose the proposed motion. Mayor Strathy?
Support.
Councillor Lucas?
Support.
Councillor Pridham?
Support.
Deputy Mayor Alward?
Opposed.
Councillor Craigmile?
Support.
Councillor Edney?
Opposed.
Thank you. Councillor Luna?
Support.
Council, you have 5 votes in support. The motion passes.
All right, I will return the chair back to Mayor Strathy, please.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Yeah, are you okay? Yeah. Do you need someone to drive you home or anything? Or you? No, I'm okay. Okay, moving on to Building and Development Monthly Report. Mr. Brower, are you with us?
Your Worship, I am. Thank you very much. So you have my report in front of you. Sorry about that, Council. You have my report in front of you. Something that we included differently this time around was basically because of when we procure the capital projects. We usually don't report back to council and let them know when we're under budget, where we beat budget, et cetera, et cetera. Usually we always come to you when we're looking for funds because we're over budget on a project. So one of the things that we're including now and we're going to be including forward is kind of that breakdown of kind of what that budget looks like. So council has a good understanding of where we are within our capital projects. Not so much on the day-to-day or the operational stuff because it's more up to Mr. Moran. But I thought it was important that council kind of sees both sides of that. And I think it's important for council to see that. Barring that, I'll be open up to any other questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? I'm glad you have good news. It's interesting. We've seen a number of bids under budget, not this much under budget, but that's quite interesting actually. So if there's nothing further from council, then I'll put a motion on the floor that DEV 16-2025 May monthly report, building and development, be received for information. Someone going to move that motion, moved by Councillor Craigmile, second by Councillor Luna. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. Moving on to community services. Ms. Ishii, please.
Good evening. Okay, I'm going to start with my monthly report. I'm just going to give an update. I'm going to focus on the pool specifically because I know we've had some questions about it. So staff have been working with the project team to establish a more accurate timeline. It's crucial to note that as we delve deeper into the project, we aim to ensure every detail is meticulously addressed. Last week, we received a report from the structural engineer that raised some concerns. The key takeaway is that the damage caused by the saltwater and humidity are becoming more apparent. So as far as our timeline, we've been working on where we're going next with our timeline. So we understand that the reopening of the pool is a significant topic in our community, and we are committed to keeping everyone informed with the most accurate information. Based on the latest updates, we anticipate the pool will be returned to us by Labor Day, best case scenario, or later into the fall around mid to late October. What that means is once we regain access to the site, there will need to be additional period required for essential tasks such as cleaning the site, filling the pool, chemically treating it, heating it, and conducting staff training. To keep the community informed, we're going to look at hosting a public open house that Brent had mentioned this evening on June 18th at the Pyramid Recreation Center in the end zone, where community members can visit the pool and ask staff questions about the project. We will also be issuing a new media release this week to provide further updates for the public. So we really appreciate everyone's patience and understanding as we work diligently to ensure the pool is safe and ready for use. Our goal remains the same and will continue to be transparent while also highlighting the positive progress being made to date. So to give a bit of an update, work that is currently happening, so the installation of the ductwork is currently in place, programming controls for the HVAC unit is being installed. Repainting of the block wall has not started, but should be starting in June. Replacement of the main pool filters, we got a timeline for that, and they are coming the week of June 16th. It's a 2-week process. And then working on rebuilding of the high bay windows and supports, which is part of that structural work that we did talk about earlier. So the pool work is continuing to happen. We're just focusing on timelines, trying to be on top of the project. We meet regularly every week. We have walkthroughs, and yeah, that's our update with the pool specifically. If anybody has any other questions about the report, I just wanted to focus on the pool specifically. Any questions?
Okay, any questions about the pool and where we're at with things? Councilor Craig Mao?
Thank you, Mayor Strathy. So Stephanie, when you do have your open house, so those recent pictures you sent around to councilors, once you took the cladding off and showed the steel structures and whatnot, I trust they're going to be blowing up to show staff what you're finding towards the end of May, and then have to get structural engineers in to determine. So now I guess there is one beam needs to be replaced, or they're going to somehow strengthen it, or?
So they're testing the steel thickness now. They're also exposing the upper part of the beam to see what it looks like up there. So we don't have all the results from that. But yes, to answer your question, we will have behind the scene photos, similarly to what we did when we did the salt to chlorine transition, when we did that transition, and we had photos of behind the background information. So we will have all of that accessible to the community.
And I understand that everybody wants the pool to get back open, but every time you peel back a little bit of this onion, we're finding something that's not so easy, which is just, the dollar signs start appearing again, and the timeline goes down. So I understand where you're at.
Councilor Pridham?
Thank you, through your worship. I'm surprised that it took so long to find that element that needed attention. The windows.
Sorry, was your question, are you am I surprised?
I am surprised. Like, why wouldn't the people working all of these months have noticed this earlier? I'm just curious why it's gone this long and not been noticed.
So as each piece, it's very similar to what Councillor Craig Miles said. That had not been exposed until this point in time. So as each piece of the project happens, the exposure to that window had not happened until this point. So that's why. We hope everything has been exposed to this time. We did ask that at our meeting again this week. We hope for no more surprises, but as the project moves along and projects like this, surprises can come up. So I understand your question, and I'm sure many other people have that same question, but it is like peeling the layers of the onion back. And until you get to that section of the building, you might not notice it.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions, comments? Councilor Lucas?
Thank you, through the mayor. Stephanie, you may not have this answer, but am I assuming we're going to get a revisit for request on funds coming to council here then regarding some of these issues?
We very well might. We do still have some contingency left. What I can tell you is we have 3 change orders in the queue right now. The change orders are actually money coming back to us and very minor in scope. We might be okay. We don't know what this means. So if this does mean we need more funds from our contingency, we will be coming to council, and it'll be a relatively quickly turnaround. So if we find it out, we want to turn it around really quickly so we can get it back to council so we can continue to move forward on the project. So to answer your question, we have roughly $30,000 left in our contingency fund. If everything goes over that, yes, it will come before council.
Any further? I know this is a difficult situation, but I think council needs to support staff in remembering that it was raised at this table by more than one councillor that was concerns about safety. We had a near mishap, and while, to staff's point, while we peel back the onion, there's been ridiculous things like the wrong kind of paint on the wall, which is unacceptable. It slowed the project down for a couple of weeks. There's been a lot all at once, but the reality is we are still close to budget. We'll probably go over, but we're still close. But you know, I've heard it from the public myself, from people thinking they're going to be swimming in the pool in a couple weeks. And the reality is that we made the decision to do this right and to put safety first. And it was raised several times, and I still stand by it, the right decision. There might be some questions about timing, and there's going to be all sorts of second guessing. But the reality is that we want to revisit this project, which obviously we've raised a lot of questions about the construction and what happened, and we can't back up the clock, but the reality, we want to do it right and make difficult decisions. So I think it's important that we support staff and take our lumps and move forward. And I think that that's the message for the public, that it's not outrageously over budget as of yet. It is slower, but safety was paramount. We made a decision because of safety and because of a very serious situation, and unfortunately it just hasn't gone well. And that anyone that's had a construction project knows how that, I built a house one time that happened. It is what it is, and unfortunately we're doing the best we can. And I think it's important that we send the message to the community that council is committed to the pool. I mean, we could have made the decision to close the place. We didn't. I had that asked me, you know, we knew it was gonna be expensive. We made the decision, we're committed to the pool, we're committed to doing it right, and it's just gonna take longer and cost a bit more money. That's not unusual, that happens. So that's where I'm at. So thank you for the report, and we'll have an open house and engage the public and carry forward. So. Okay, the rest of your report. Anything else, Stephanie?
Yeah, are there any other questions? I didn't highlight anything specific, but if anybody has any specific questions, by all means.
Okay. All right, thank you. I just didn't know if you wanted to add anything. Councillor Lucas, yeah?
Thank you, through the mayor. Stephanie, I was looking at the museum seminars, and I've been kind of paying attention to them. They're always sold out or waitlisted. Is there opportunity to do something with that? I'm just, like, to allow more people in, like, can we, I mean, we don't necessarily want to change the venue from the museum, but is that something that we could look at? Just every time I look at one to sign up, it's like, oh, it's waitlisted, or it's sold out, or whatever, or you're running 2 and they're both sold out. So I'm curious about that.
So I can definitely talk to Amy about that. I mean, there could be a second one run, maybe back to back, 2 in an evening, although that would go rather late. We're experiencing that issue with many of our programs. Many of our programs, so not just the museum, is waitlisted. So many people want to sign up for programs. We find that they fill up really quickly, and then they're waitlisted. And when Amy and her team had done the tours of the cemetery, those were also ones that were waitlisted, and they added more and more and more on. So I mean, it's a very valid question, or a very valid point. And I mean, it's something that is definitely positive in the community. So we can look at that for sure, absolutely. I suspect there hasn't been any conversation about that at the Heritage Committee.
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Craigmont?
Thank you, Worship. Stephanie, have you had any meetings recently with tennis, pickleball, and come up with any sort of, they starting on any sort of designs or, you know, because if there's something we need to get done, we should get that submitted into Upper Thames while all the other fundraising and stuff is ongoing to just get the approval done.
So yes, we have had many discussions with our racket sports groups, primarily because the season started, and now that the weather's a little bit nicer and there's not rain, we've talked a lot about the painting of the courts and the nets that are both supposed to be happening in the spring. So for those individuals out there that are very excited about that coming, it's all on order and all of that is happening. We are working behind the scenes with our town crew on that expansion of that court so we can get some kind of a footprint so we can share that with Upper Thames. So that is still in process behind the scenes, but we just wanted to get the courts up and running first, and our groups know that we're working on it, and we will be sharing it with them once we have it completed.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions, comments? Okay, thank you for your report. The suggested motion is that DCS 33-2025 May monthly report, community services, be received for information. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Elwood, seconded by Councillor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Next item is the request to reinstate the morning lane swim. Ms. Issue, please.
Okay, now while we know the pool won't be open a little too early, still we are still bringing this forward because there was a request that did come in, so I wanted to bring it while the request came in. So just to give a brief overview for council that wasn't here at the time of the core services review. In 2019, we did a core services review in which staff had developed a methodology on evaluating our services and programs that we provide. This came out of the request from the Rec and Leisure Master Plan in 2017, and it was something they wanted us to review and make sure that our operations were running effective, efficient, and to the best of our ability. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't providing programs for the community that was costing more than what we should be spending. So we designed a methodology, and I know council would have seen this over the times because we used the same pyramid throughout the COVID times where we decided what programs were most should be brought online quicker than others. So the pyramid methodology was adopted to categorize each of our programs and services that are currently offered. So this model was intended to target cost recovery levels and account for direct and indirect costs. So we looked at a full exercise of what a program costs and how much it costs to operate, what we should charge if it was, based on the pyramid. Should we charge for it? Should it be free? Like a playground should be free because it has the most benefit for the community. However, if I was having a private swimming lesson, that would be an individual benefit, so it should cost me more. So it's kind of how we looked at how our programs were placed within this pyramid. So this was an exercise that we designed back in 2019, and we've continued to use it since that time. At that time, it was determined that the morning lane swim was the most cost prohibitive program that we offered. The number of lane swimmers in the morning lane swim was minimal compared to the number of lane swimmers that came throughout the day. Yes, some people were displaced from that program. So we had anywhere between 0 and 12 people that would swim in a morning lane swim. Some days we'd have 1, some days we'd have 3, some days we'd have 6. It would kind of bounce all over the place because the morning lane swim was offered Monday through Friday. After the exercise of the core services review, we had decided at that time that this would be a program that we would no longer offer. The reason for that was because the benefit to the community and the cost within the pyramid, it cost more. So in order for a lane swimmer to come in, we should be a morning lane swim, we would have to charge them an excessive amount of money. So it didn't mean that lane swims didn't exist within the pool. We still offer lane swims every single day. They are offered at noon and they are offered in the evening, and there are some weekend ones. So lane swims continue to exist. We just switched them from the morning. At that time, we also looked at taking our morning programming and shifting it to the afternoon because we knew there was more of a need in the community, which is what the Core Services Review and the old Rec and Leisure Master Plan had set for us. So we offered programs such as Aquafit, the early on programs, were offered in the afternoon, and we had more individuals that would partake in it. We also looked at adult swimming lessons and parent and taught swimming lessons. So those were all offered in the afternoon. That shifted our morning staff person to come in later in the day, therefore allowing the programs to happen in the afternoon. So when we look at all of this exercise that we had done back in 2019, looking at the cost to operate the service, looking at the participation numbers and taking all of those indirect costs into account, and I used that exercise to reevaluate it at this time and ran the whole morning lane swim through that exercise, and it still costs the most money to operate this program in the pool, and it's merely because participant numbers are so low, and we don't have enough participants. Where we might have 40 in an aquafit class for 45 minutes, we only have 3 show up for a lane swim some days, so the cost to operate it doesn't offset itself. So based on all the factors that I spoke of with the Core Services Review, staff still believe that we should not reinstate the morning lane swim, and we should continue to operate as we are and invest our money and effort in our afternoon programming where we're getting our best bang for our buck. We're getting more individuals out. I know that still displaces those individuals that might enjoy that morning lane swim, but it doesn't work with the numbers that we look at right now. If we were to look at shifting our morning and reinstating the morning lane swim, we would have to bring our morning staff in earlier, which would mean we wouldn't be able to offer those afternoon programs just because our lifeguards are in school and can't run those afternoon programs, and we don't get them in until 4 in the afternoon. So those programs, our lifeguard would have to start at 6 and be done roughly by 1:30. So I've kind of rambled on a little bit about this because there was quite an exercise done like we had done in the 2019 Core Services Review. I reran the numbers. I re-looked at it based on what we had. I looked at the Rec and Leisure Master Plan, also what it recommended, and the recommendations through that plan was there was nobody that asked for this morning lane swim. This has come since that plan was brought forward. And there has not been an increase to our lane swim through the study period at this time through the Rec and Leisure Master Plan, so they didn't even recommend that at all. So sorry, I rambled on a little bit. I hope that was clear, but I leave it to council if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Questions, Councillor Alward?
Thanks, Your Worship. Honestly, just a comment. My take on this is like I'm not going to cancel a more popular program for the sake of this program that is less popular. If times were different, we were drowning in lifeguards. Sorry for the pun. Then maybe, but in this case, I think we're fine. Status quo.
Councillor Craigmillan?
Thank you, Worship. The Core Service Review was done to try and help us financially with our different facilities, and what you have done is exactly what council told you to do. So I have to support your findings. When you had your meeting with, based upon this letter, is there a reason why they didn't participate in the afternoon or evening lane swims?
Yes, I did ask that question, and they just prefer, the answer is they just prefer the mornings.
Thank you.
Further questions, comments? Okay, thank you for that report. I'll put the motion on the floor then, see where it goes. The DCS 34-2025 request to reinstate morning lane swim report be received, and the council does not reinstate the morning lane swim at the Pyramid Recreation Center. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Alward, second by Councillor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Stephanie. Next up is the skate towel report. I believe Mr. Lapointe is going to handle that. Mr. Lapointe, please.
Yes, good evening. Can everyone hear me okay? This is just a real quick procurement award where we're actually not awarding. We're recommending that we reject all of the bids that were submitted for the tender of the skate tile replacement. We reviewed the tenders and the low bid, many irregularities, did not meet the minimum specs. And the other 3 bids were well over budget. We had a budget of $150,000, and the first satisfactory bid was more than 35% above the budget. So we recommend rejecting all the tenders, and we will perform some increased maintenance costs on the skate tile to preserve it until we do the project in the future. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll put the motion on the floor then that DCS 36-2025 skate tile replacement report be received, that the council rejects all bids received for tender RFT DCS 20-2025 skate tile replacement. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Alward, second by Councillor Luna. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to 8.4, corporate services. Mr. Moran, please.
Good evening, Council. A couple of items I wanted to touch on my monthly report. First, just give you an update. We are short some resources in corporate services as of this week. We are short 1 finance staff and 1 IT staff. Having said that, HR will certainly advise later in her report. But that recruitment is well underway. So again, hopefully those vacancies will be filled shortly. The other highlight I want to mention is on our spending and variance side of things. 2 variances there I wanted to highlight, both positive. One is our new manager of finance, in his review of our HST, has found some credits that are due to us from our hydro bills up to the tune of about $93,000. And then on our IT mobility services, we have signed a new contract. The province has a new record, a vendor record last year, which we were able to tap into, which will save us about $15,000 or so a year as well. So again, 2 good news stories from that perspective. The last thing I just wanted to highlight that's not in my report, but Council certainly had a letter from the province on Bill 17 earlier this evening. That is something we're paying, treasurers in the province are paying attention to, specifically the pieces around the development charges and changes coming to development charges. We are participating with MFOA, Municipal Finance Officers of Ontario, to provide some commentary on this bill. There's 2 specific areas we're really concerned about on development charges. The first is the province is going to make some changes to the scope in which the capital eligibility happens, and they'll be able to make those changes through regulation. So what that means is the province will be able to pass regulations at a whim to basically change what capital costs are eligible or not eligible. And that could mean, for example, they may say water and wastewater capital costs are no longer eligible or something to that effect. Then what does that mean? And the challenge with that, of course, is there are concerns with development charges across the province and how maybe they impact housing costs. The challenge is the dollars raised by development charges go to pay for items for growth-related infrastructure. And if development charges aren't collected on that behalf, those costs have to come from somewhere. So again, where do those costs come from? The other piece is around the deferral of payments to the occupancy permit side of things, which again has some cash flow related items. We've talked about this a little bit in the past, but really it has to do with the collection of DCs. Right now, what happens is in order to get a building permit, they would have to get their development charges paid up, and then we withhold the building permit until those development charges and other fees are paid. If it goes to occupancy, the challenge that we might have is when occupancy happens, that's where sometimes title changes as well. So there's not going to be a legal tool for us to say, well, you can't get occupancy until you pay your development charges. So what happens if those don't get paid in a timely fashion and the property gets transferred to a new owner? Who's going to pay those? Who's responsible for those? Is the new owner going to have to pay those? And again, that really defeats the whole proposal of lowering housing costs, et cetera. So again, a couple of items I wanted to address with council. There's a lot more information going to come forward on this one that I will pass along to council as I have it, but I did want to mention that today in regards to the letter you received earlier this evening. From that, I'm happy to answer any other questions council might have about our monthly report.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councilor Pridham.
Thank you, through your worship. Just about the fees and collection of the fees, can't you put a lien on the property for, and then it would have to be paid out at transfer, and it would be the obligation of the current owner to pay it out, not the new owner?
Through the mayor, absolutely correct. But again, from a timing perspective, depending on how all of that timing happens, and again, registering that on title has some legal implications, takes some time. And again, it just adds another flavor that we think the province needs to think about in regards to this. And there's ways to deal with that, I believe. I agree with you, Councillor Pridham, but we just want to make sure that it's properly identified.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Okay, thank you for your report. I'll put the motion on the floor that COR 21-2025 May monthly report corporate services be received for information. So I'm going to move that motion. Councillor Craigmile moves. Their seconder. Councillor Alward. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on to fire and emergency services. I believe Acting Chief Phil West is with us this evening. There we go. I think you're muted, Chief West. You're new at this. It took us all 2 years to figure this out. So yeah.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Departmental highlights. I'll have it as a highlight. Chief Anderson, last day was May 19th. It's a highlight. I think we can celebrate his 9 years of service. He brought us as a struggling department with equipment and that, and with council support, mayor support. He's brought us to a really good spot, a bunch of professional firefighters, and we have the tools to get the job done. So we'll celebrate that the 9 years that he provided us. He was a great teacher, mentor, and leader. So I took over as acting chief on the 20th. Calls for the month, April 12th to May 16th, we had 12. Couple automatic alarms, a couple medical calls, 2 motor vehicle accidents in St. Mary's, 1 per South. We had a couple fires we went to, and your typical CO or acting up alarm. Average attendance noted was 14. Duty officer calls was 2. We responded 57 calls this year from the time period that January 1st to May 16th, compared to 48 in 2024. To date, we're 63 calls compared to 57 from last year. Fire prevention, obviously there's some changeover there. Brian did a heck of a job the years he was with us, and Chris St. Clair is doing a really good job filling in his footsteps. So some of the stats here were started with Brian and followed up with Chris. So Chris is finishing up some of Brian's orders and stuff, and pretty well, everything's looking good. For meeting wise, we had a meeting April 15th in North Perth. I attended with Chief Anderson. We met the new fire marshal. It was very productive. All the other chiefs for Perth were there, except for one department. Mutual aid meeting a couple days later in North Perth. We met with Huron Perth crisis team. That was a good presentation. Following that, May 15th, we had, I attended with a couple of our firefighters, and that was in Mitchell, and that was under fire investigations. That was very well done that evening as well. A few events we've had, or some tours we've had, Beavers and Scouts, we had them in. Tim Horton Smile Cookie, we took part in that to help raise some money. Our firefighter breakfast, well received again this year. It seems like we always hit that 1,000 customer benchmark. We were busy all the way through to about 11:40 that day, and we participated with our ladder truck at McHappy Day. Training, you'll see we got some good training in to top it off at the end of the month. With our last practice, we had some mutual training with the Uniondale Fire Department. So we enjoy to bring in another fire department to help us maintain those mutual aid contacts we have. Spending water rescue PPE just over $1,000. We had issues with the pumper. We had to get it borescope test. It cost $1,133. Our annual ladder test is there on there as well. Annual pump test and truck tires for Tanker 3 and Rescue 4.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? Councilor Alward?
Thanks, Your Worship. Mr. West, I guess I'm just curious, that borescope procedure, was that on the newer pumper? Yeah? And also, what is a borescope procedure?
Through your worship to Councillor Alward, a borescope was to see, it basically, it's like that camera you see them use in home improvement shows where they go in the wall and they take a look. This was to go into our pump to see if there was internal damage. We felt like there was a bearing going in the pump, and that the pump does have issues that we need to address.
I see.
Okay, thank you. Further questions from council? Mr. West, we're very appreciative of you stepping into the role as acting chief, and just wondered if you, just for our information, I know you're splitting time between your full-time job and the chief's position. Could you just, for the benefit of council, just let us know when you're at the fire hall? I know you're keeping regular office hours.
So I'm trying to be here the best I can at 10 o'clock Monday. I am in here on weekends catching up, and because I'm a 2-minute drive away from the fire hall, so it's pretty handy. So if we get a call on the weekend, I'm usually doing the report right after, whether it's Saturday, Sunday. So I'm basically Monday and Tuesday, I'm here usually 10 o'clock till 4. I do come back sometimes between 5 and 6. Wednesday, same sort of thing. It might be a little reduced. Thursday, I've been taking off, and Friday, I'm trying to do the 10 to 3, 10 to 4, possibly coming back an hour later for an hour worth of work and working on the weekends. And there's a lot of asked in town for events. So our team was at the Water Festival on the weekend, so I went down there for an hour just to support the team. So it is I look at it as we're lucky to have a good group of firefighters, and I'd love to support them. And it's not an 8 to 5 job. It's basically 7 days a week, and you do have time to unwind and not be not doing fire hall all the time, but it is a 7-day-a-week job, and one that pulls you out at nights.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your service. Further questions from council? All right, thank you for your report, sir. So the suggested motion is that FD 07-2025 May monthly report, emergency services, be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Pridham, second by Councillor Lucas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council.
So moving on to item 8.6 with regards to human resources. Ms. Knechtel, are you with us?
I am. Good evening, Your Worship. And are you laughing at me? Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Oh, Ruby's here too. Should I have mentioned that? I just thought it was worth a little smile. It's been a long night so far. So just a couple points to talk about. It's already been mentioned, but we have a lot of recruiting going on. So it continues to be a busy time. For this month, for April, there was 13 positions within the recruitment cycle. So somewhere within that cycle, that's a lot. So we're very busy in that field. Mr. Moran mentioned that we are coming to the closing of some of those positions, which is great. In addition to recruiting, we're making some improvements in our human resources information system. So they're highlighted in the report. I'm not going to go into detail. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, is the date is not in the report, but we have an upcoming staff appreciation, and it is on June 11th at lunchtime at the MOC. And other than that, everything's in the report, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Questions,
welcome.
questions from council? Councilor Alward?
Will Ruby be coming to the staff appreciation barbecue?
You know, I think she may. It's a valid question.
See you there.
Okay, if nothing further then, I'll put the motion on the floor that HR 05-2025 May monthly report, human resources, be received for information. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councilor Alward, second by Councilor Luna. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Moving on to 8.7, Public Works. Mr. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. It has been a long night, so I'll be brief. Just a couple of highlights on the monthly report. Energy demand plan is completed. It's posted on the website. As Acting Chief Mr. West stated, we had the Water Festival on the weekend. I think it went over extremely well. We had some good weather. Over 800 attendants, I think, went through there. So many thanks to all the volunteers, Upper Thames, that sort of thing, fire department, early on staff, and then the respective individual volunteers. I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody if I start naming them off. We did the pre-construction meeting for the Elgin Street reconstruction. We haven't got an exact schedule from the contractor yet. The sidewalk grinder is out and about. Staff training is complete, so you'll see them out grinding sidewalks for deflections. So we're going to do a grind before we do our annual inspection. The radar signs are being relocated throughout town. That data is being collaborated with the Stratford Police for their enforcement activities. Flower bed conversions are nearly complete. I think they're looking okay. I'm just gonna have to wait for the flowers to take, but I think that'll be a good upgrade. The downtown annual flowers are pending in the next week or so. Wellington Street reconstruction, it looks like those sidewalks are tentatively scheduled for June to be replaced. And then on the variance section, we had an issue with the hydrovac with the remote control. We have an old unit, had a wired remote control. There was issues with the wiring harness, but we were able to find a contractor to bypass the wiring harness and install a wireless remote on our hydrovac. So yeah, that's about it. I have the reports there. I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? Okay, seeing nothing, I'll put a motion on the floor that PW 29-2025 May monthly report, Public Works, be received for information. Someone willing to move that? Councillor Alward moves. Seconder, Councillor Craigmile. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Moving on, the next item is with regards to procurement of roll-off containers. Mr. Kelly, please.
Thank you, Worship. So this is just a follow-up for an earlier report that council received in a motion that was passed. It's a purchase of roll-off containers for the landfill and various collection programs. This will represent an efficiency at the landfill. It should defer our bin rentals. And it does align, the way it's looking like the delivery will align with our yard waste hauling contracts ending and our landfill tipping contracts ending. So once we have those bins in inventory, if approved tonight, we'll be looking for unit rate tenders for the hauling of those bins to various locations. So tipping within the landfill and then trucking within town. So it's pretty standard. It is being funded from moderation money, and we do expect a pretty quick ROI on these.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments from council? Okay, I'll put the motion on the floor then, that PW 30-2025 procurement of roll-off containers report be received, and the council award the procurement for the supply and delivery of 740 cubic yard roll-off containers to AMM Manufacturing, Inc. for the procured price of $82,461.75, inclusive of all taxes and contingencies. Someone willing to move that motion? Moved by Councillor Allward. Is there a second? Councillor Pridham. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you for that report. Moving on, under item 9, I have nothing for emergent or unfinished businesses, which brings us to notices of motion. There was a motion proposed by Councillor Luna, and I'll read it and then ask for a seconder, and we can discuss. So Councillor Luna has moved, whereas on April 9th, 2025, the Government of Ontario here in the province, led by Premier Doug Ford, announced a proposal to expand strong mayor powers. Is provided for by Part 6-1 of the Municipal Act 2001 to the heads of council in 169 additional municipalities, including the town of St. Mary's, effective May 1st, 2025. And whereas strong mayor powers erode democratic process and have fundamentally altered the historic model of local governance, which has existed for almost 2 centuries, by providing the head of council with the authority to give direction and make certain decisions without the usual consensus from majority of the duly elected members of council. And whereas the strong mayor powers significantly alter the balance of governance at the municipal level, undermining the role of council in decision-making and weakening the fundamental democratic principle of majority rule. And whereas the province is undermining the local governance model and municipal independence by attempting to advance its priorities through municipalities and downloading its responsibility to the same. And whereas the town of St. Mary's has a long history of collaborative, transparent, and accountable local governance built upon a foundation of council debate and shared decision-making. And whereas many municipal elected officials across the province and members of the public have expressed significant concern regarding the imposition of these powers, and whereas the town of St. Mary's did not formally request or express a desire to be designated on the strong mayor framework, and whereas a growing number of municipalities and elected officials across Ontario are questioning the appropriateness of the strong mayor system and are calling for its reconsideration or repeal, therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council of the corporation of the town of St. Mary's formally opposes the expansion of the strong mayor powers as announced on the 9th of April 2025. The mayor and council requests that the proposed amendments to OREG 530-/22 to expand strong mayor powers and duties to additional municipalities not include the town of St. Mary's, and the mayor and council directs the clerk to forward a copy of this resolution to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, Honourable Rob Flack, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Matthew Ray, MPP, Perth Wellington, AMCUTO, AMO, and all Ontario municipalities. It is moved by Councillor Luna. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Allward. Councillor Luna, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've spoken about this this motion quite a bit now, and I just wanted to reiterate a little bit of the points in the motion. Your Worship, you recently sent me an article written by Nigel Belchamber, and for those who don't know who Mr. Belchamber is, he's a well-respected consultant to local governments and a counselor educator. In this article, Mr. Belchamber makes it very clear that he believes the strong mayor powers undermine the democratic process of government and that, quote, it does not tie in with housing or infrastructure growth. He states that this legislation will influence who runs for mayor and their motives for doing so. Also, with decreased council influence, it will discourage some from running for a council seat. It could also lead to some running as a team to ensure agendas are successful. Mayoral control of the municipal budget is a huge concern. Fiscal responsibility should not be in the hands of one person. Then there's the issue of mayoral control over hiring and firing of key department heads and the CAO. Municipal staff, especially the CAO, must have confidence to speak up and guide council. This can't and won't happen if their fate is in the hands of one person, the mayor. Mr. Bill Chamber ended the article with a quote, "Local democracy is at risk," unquote. My hope is that all the small municipalities can agree and make the same request to the province. If our request is accepted by the province, the town of St. Mary's will be removed from the list of municipalities that practice the strong mayor powers. And I'm going to ask for a recorded vote on this matter, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments with regards to this proposal? Councillor Craigmile.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to start by saying that I completely support the motion here by Councillor Luna. But I just wanted to get, I believe what I'm saying here is correct, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Clerk, but unless there is a repeal or reconsideration, the strong mayor powers still exist. And I just think it's important that, especially the public understands that no matter what we do here, unless there's a reconsideration or repeal, it's you know, falls on deaf ears. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Further comments? Councillor Luna?
My understanding, thank you, Worship. My understanding of that is that if the province were to accept our proposal, our resolution, and remove us from the list of participating municipalities, we're off the table as far as strong mayor powers are concerned. A future council could request to be put back on the list, but this would cover future councils until a request is made to be put back on the list, as long as the province grants our request.
Agreed, if they grant.
Right, right.
Yeah, the point is the legislation is in effect, but it's a question of whether they grant a request, yeah. If this carries, yeah. Okay. Further comments, questions? I'll say that I was surprised when this legislation came into effect, and I agree with Councillor Luna, and will be supporting the resolution because I don't think it's certainly necessary in our community, and I think the legislation is too broad in perspective, and I really don't understand all the implications, and certainly the way this council has functioned, I don't think there's any necessity to have a strong mayor. I'll leave it at that. Okay, anything further? I'll turn it over to the clerk for recorded vote then, please.
Thank you, Mayor Strathy. Just to add one point to that, if I may, very quickly. Over the course of the weekend, a councillor from Rideau Lakes up near Ottawa has reached out to a couple of municipalities and specifically asked if there has been a motion put on the floor related to strong mayors. And if there has been, or when there may be, if that motion could then be forwarded to her. It sounds like there has been a coalition that has been started that is collecting that information and will be doing further advocacy to try to further exactly that point about asking for municipalities to be removed from the list. So if I hear any further information, I'll certainly share it. My apologies for deviating from the recorded vote. If you are in support of the motion as was read by Mayor Strathley, please answer that your vote is in support. If you oppose, please state oppose. Beginning with Councillor Luna.
Support.
Mayor Strathley.
Support.
Councillor Lucas.
Support.
Councillor Pridham.
Support.
Councillor Alward.
Support.
Councillor Craigmile.
Support.
I have 6 votes in support. The resolution passes.
Okay, thank you. We have another notice of motion that was printed. I don't think I'll read it, but it was put forth by Councillor Pridham and will be up for discussion on June 10th. I don't know, Councillor Pridham, is there anything you wanted to add to this? Just
Yes, I would like to add that, that the mayor and council direct the clerk to forward a copy to, and then if this passes, so that's, I don't see that that's on there, but, and forward a copy to all the appropriate people, you know, the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, our Representative John Nader, Honorable Doug Ford, and housing ministers in both levels of government, and all of our surrounding rural partners in need of funding and not receiving grant support. So all of the communities that should be included in that.
okay, I'll maybe suggest you can put that on the floor as an amendment and.
Sure, I would like to.
June 10th.
On June 10th?
Well, maybe on June 10th, yeah. when it
Okay.
comes up, we'll propose an
we
amendment and procedurally, we'll put it on the floor because you've made notice of the motion, put it on the floor, and then propose an amendment, how you want it worded, and we'll carry the motion from there. Okay?
Okay,
I believe that's procedurally correct with the clerk, yes.
okay, thank you.
Okay? But thank you for that. So that will be on June 10th. All right, so the next item is upcoming meetings. June 10th is the regular council meeting in council chambers. June 17th, strategic priorities, council chambers. June 24th, regular meeting of council. I will be absent. Councillor Deputy Mayor Allward will be in the chair. Anything else with regards to meetings anyone needs to know about? Councillor Craig Mao?
Thank you, Worship. It's been brought up a couple times tonight, and I was going to mention it too, but the data that you've heard about the Perth Children's Water Festival at the Flats on Sunday afternoon was well attended. I mean, there was slightly over, I believe, 20 booths set up there, and it was people could wander around. I think a big hit was the birds of prey and whatnot. Plus, our dock was a big success, and there was kayaks there and life jackets and lined up and streaming them out into the water. It was, you know, when you start getting 800 over the 3 hours, they had like over 800 people there. That was very impressive.
That's great, thank you.
All the ring road was, I'm going to say 80% full of cars parked on both sides for 80% of the way around.
Okay.
They didn't do any parking in at the farmer's market there where it's paved. That was for, you know, an area for patrons to be wander around different booths and stuff, so.
Okay, thank you. Anything further with regards to meetings? Okay, which leads us to our confirmation bylaw. So the suggested motion is that bylaw 36-2025 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the May 27, 2025 regular council meeting be approved by council. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Allward, second by Councillor Luna. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. And finally, that leads us to a motion to adjourn. So the suggested motion is this regular meeting of council be adjourned at 8:44 p.m. So I'm willing to move that motion. Moved by Councillor Luna, seconded Councillor Lucas. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you.